All right, press the record button just so we don't lose anything. And I'm going to double check. Watch live now. Shichi, Avatar live stream. There we go. Okay, so we're about half an hour early today, and that's probably going to be the case for the next few weeks, and we'll talk a little bit more about why I am finally comfortable revealing to you guys why I am taking a week off in the next month here. But welcome if you're new to these Monday live streams. We do these Monday live streams every week, but then roughly around 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific. Like I said, we're about half an hour early from our usual scheduled time. But we do it weekly, every Monday, on a different topic every week. We have recycled a couple topics, but usually our more popular topics like sports and professional wrestling and Formula One, we will cycle through every few months or so. Today is the first time we've ever done an Avatar: The Last Airbender live stream. Now, how we typically do our live streams is we do a little roundup of the week, mostly sports stuff, but also some of our other we'll talk a little bit about the Doctor Who roundup and some more news coming out of shows that we have talked about or will talk about on this channel before. And then we'll get straight into it. We will go through all of my Excel spreadsheets relating to Avatar: The Last Airbender. And then at the end of that, we will talk a little bit about the upcoming live action show. What's going on with the fandom, what's going on with the book series or the comic series. And then we will talk about what's coming up on the channel in the future here. So let's start with a roundup of the week. Start with sports and just go through them here. So baseball news, the Brewers retook the lead at the top of the NL Central. They had been behind the Pirates for the last month or so. Not the last month. Baseball hasn't been on that long, but the last couple weeks they were behind the Pirates. They reclaimed that lead. The Pirates are 2-8 in their last 10 games. Brewers are 5-5, but they're coming off a sweep of the American League Kansas City Royals. Elsewhere, the Rays are still at the top of the AL East. Twins still top of the AL Central. Rangers still top of the AL West. Braves are still top of the NL East, and the Dodgers are now firmly in the top of the NL West, having beaten the Brewers 2-1 in their series. Oh gosh, don't ask me where it was. I can't remember if it was in Los Angeles or Milwaukee. But that being said, the MLB also released their... Sorry, there's a bunch of dust flying around. I might sneeze a lot on this podcast. Here's what I'm going to do. On air right now, I said podcast. This is a live stream. I'm going to take this can of compressed air and go... Woo! There you go. That's the only time I will ever do that on live stream. It's really hot outside, but it's really cold in my basement, so I'm wearing a sweatshirt. But anyways, the MLB released their top 10 every week. They do a top 10 weekly rankings. And I think the Rays are still firmly the best team in the major leagues. The Brewers are lying in 7th or 8th place right now. And then second place is the Braves, but the Braves just got swept by the Blue Jays. So the Blue Jays are in 6th place, but fans, or at least the comment section on Instagram, was, of course, pointing that out specifically. Hockey news. It's been 2 weeks since we've done an actual live stream because last week I was out of town with my wife, and so we had a pre-recorded stream. Sports news, the NHL and NBA playoffs have been going and concluding their pre-conference final series. So the NHL has one game left. I believe it's tonight is Game 7 between the Kraken and the Stars. My guess is if the NHL is scripted, the Kraken are going to play the Vegas Golden Knights in the conference finals. The game is in Dallas. Dallas has been playing well at home, but genuinely, I think it's a toss-up. Seattle looks really hot in their last game at home in Seattle, and this is, of course, a Game 7. So winner go on, loser go home. The other team in the Western Conference Finals is Vegas, and the two teams in the Eastern Conference Finals are Carolina and Florida. So very much they're calling it the Bettman playoffs. Gary Bettman is the commissioner of the NHL, is a huge fan of Southern teams and expansion teams, and he's made a lot of money bringing teams to the Southern United States. If Seattle is to win tonight, then both Western Conference teams are the two new teams in the NHL, Vegas and Seattle. If Dallas wins, then all four teams in the NHL are south of the Mason-Dixon line and new to the league since Gary Bettman took charge of the league. And I think, was it 93? that he took control. He used to be an NBA executive, and then he took over as commissioner of hockey in the early 90s. And his commissionership, if that's a word, his tenure as commissioner has been criticized for prioritizing money and expanding the league into the southern United States rather than preserving it in Canada. An example of this is he took the Quebec Nordiques and moved them to Colorado. He took the Hartford Whalers in Hartford, Connecticut, and moved them to Carolina. He added teams in Tampa Bay and Florida. He added a team in Atlanta. Now, Atlanta is the one exception because Atlanta did end up relocating to Winnipeg to fill the spot of the former Winnipeg Jets. But the original Winnipeg Jets did move under his tenure to become the Arizona Coyotes. He's done everything in his power to keep the Coyotes in Arizona. He also added Anaheim, San Jose, and now Vegas and Seattle. And I also forgot to mention the Minnesota North Stars are now the Dallas Stars. So all four teams, regardless of who wins between Seattle and Dallas tonight, are going to be part of those relocated or expansion teams under his tenure. Moving over to basketball, we have the conference finals in both conferences set now. Yesterday, Boston had a pretty convincing victory over the Philadelphia 76ers. Joel Embiid is now and remains the only MVP in NBA history to have never made a conference final in his entire career. So a lot of fans frustrated that he won the MVP this year over Nikola Jokic. Jokic is in the conference finals. And I just realized this today when I was going through my sports spreadsheets, which we won't go into today, but this is a rehash of the conference finals from 3 years ago. So you'll remember the pandemic era finals between Los Angeles and Miami that LeBron won with the Lakers. All four of those conference finals teams are the same teams from this year. So the Western Conference Finals, then the Lakers beat the Nuggets, and the Heat ended up beating the Celtics. So we'll see if that remains the same this year or what will be the case going forward. Football news. The XFL Championship was this weekend between Arlington and DC. Now, Arlington was kind of criticized, or the league was criticized rather, for the fact that Arlington, who was a 4-6 team, less than a 500 win average, ended up making the playoffs based on how bad the South Division was in comparison to the North Division this year. Now, I was one of those people frustrated at the fact that my Battlehawks were 7-3 and ended up missing the playoffs because they tied with Seattle. And either way, whether it be St. Louis or Seattle, the win differential or the point differential would have forced one 7-3 team to not make the playoffs based on how they do the playoffs. Arlington, did I say Dallas earlier? I meant Arlington. Went into the playoffs being the 4-6 team. Nobody wanted them in the playoffs. They surprised Houston in the conference or in the division finals, and then they surprised DC. Now DC was a 9-1 team, the best team in the XFL, the regular season champions, and Arlington came out swinging. Louis Perez ended up winning the XFL MVP award, and Arlington, the Renegades, are the first ever, at least of the revived XFL, the first ever new XFL champions. So the XFL is planning to return next year, as far as I have been informed or been able to read over the weekend. The XFL is planning on returning next year for a 2024 season. There haven't been any changes in coaching staffs. There haven't been any changes with teams or stadiums, but I will keep you guys up to date with that. The only other big football news, Matt Ryan has not officially announced his retirement. In fact, he actually joked about that in his post announcing his new position. But Matt Ryan will not be playing football this year and will in fact be joining the CBS broadcasting team. I haven't read into details. I don't know if that's as a studio announcer or as a play-by-play, or a color commentator rather, for CBS on television. But he has signed on to be on CBS television this season rather than playing quarterback. Soccer news, or football news, association football news. The Premier League is coming to a close. There are 2 weeks left. It looks like Man City has the title pretty secure, their third straight title, and I think the sixth title in the last 7 or 8 years for them. Probably 8 years. I think Chelsea had one in there, and I think Liverpool had one in there as well. But Arsenal kind of blew it last weekend, and then this weekend they got smoked 3-0 by my wife's team, Brighton and Hove Albion. So Man City, it's looking like they will clinch the title with a win over, oh boy, do they play Leicester City tomorrow? I can't remember who they play. I think they play tomorrow. And then the relegation battle at the bottom. Right now, the bottom three are Southampton at the bottom, who have officially been relegated to the championship. And then Leicester City is currently in 19th, and Leeds is currently in 18th. Now, two other teams could potentially be relegated, those being Everton and, oh gosh, who is the other one? It's not Wolves. Everton and... Oh, I got to look it up because I just gave you some information and left you hanging there. So, Premier League table. The top 15 teams are all safe, but like I said, Southampton has been relegated. Everton and Nottingham Forest is the other team. So, Nottingham Forest, Everton, Leeds United, and Leicester City all have the potential to be relegated yet. And here's a live update as I'm looking at my phone here. I lied. It's not Leicester City playing Man City tomorrow. Right now, Leicester is taking on Liverpool, and they're losing 0-3. So, with a loss, Leicester City does not certainly become relegated, but remains in 19th place, very likely to be relegated. So mathematically not eliminated yet, but very likely will be eliminated. That's Leicester City, who were the champions in 2016. So I lied to you. It wasn't Chelsea who interrupted that Man City streak there. It was actually Leicester City in their fairy tale run. And then in the championship for promotion to the Premier League, this is, of course, English Association football. Burnley has secured their promotion, and so has Sheffield United, I believe. So the third place promotion playoffs are still happening as I speak, but the two of the three teams that are certainly going to be promoted next year are Burnley and Sheffield United. Let's talk, apart from sports news then, this kind of sports news. F1 over the weekend, the Miami Grand Prix. We saw Max Verstappen take his third of 5 races this season. All 5 races have now been won by Red Bull. Were all 5 of them Red Bull 1-2s? I think they were. So Sergio Perez is immediately behind him in the championship. And Red Bull is looking very strong, but obviously Red Bull is looking like they are prioritizing Max Verstappen over Sergio Perez with their strategies. Very easy win by the end of the race by Max Verstappen. And the one American on the grid who was actually racing in his home race, Logan Sargent, who is from Fort Lauderdale, struggled very aggressively, took 20th place at the first of 3 United States Grand Prix this season, or Grands Prix this season. I don't know why. Sometimes I get really frustrated when people don't use the S, the plural S, in the right spot, which is kind of petty of me. So apologies for correcting myself there. Wrestling news, we have Roman Reigns about to hit 1,000 days as WWE Universal Champion. At Night of Champions that same night, they are going to crown a new World Heavyweight Champion. That match is between Seth Rollins and AJ Styles. In other huge wrestling news, more specifically Saudi Arabia Night of Champions news, Sami Zayn will be in Saudi Arabia in a title match. The first time he has ever been to that country. Of course, he has Syrian heritage, and Saudi Arabia's political relationship with Syria over the last however many years has been poor to the point that they will not allow Sami Zayn into the country. He will now be wrestling in his first match in that country in a title match with Kevin Owens defending their United Tag Team Championships against not the Usos, but Solo Sikoa and Roman Reigns. Roman trying to get 4 belts over his shoulder ahead of his 1,000 days as champion. So that's all coming forward in wrestling news. Last little roundup thing. We got information about, just left my mind. What have we been talking about what TV show am I trying to give insight to? I love when this happens on camera. I totally forget what I was about to talk about. Oh, two things. First of all, Black Mirror is coming back. This was announced a couple weeks ago, but I forgot to mention it on Livestream, and we haven't had an actual live stream since then. Black Mirror will premiere season 6 in June on Netflix. So look for, I believe it's July 3rd, we'll be doing a Black Mirror live stream. The first and probably last, unless they do a 7th season of our Black Mirror content on the channel. So just a quick 1-week one-off. But I'm very excited to talk about that. I've recorded most of my videos for that already. And I am currently rewatching the entire first 5 seasons ahead of that to make an official ranking video on the channel, which I'm really excited to record probably the end of this week or beginning of next week. And then the other big news, Doctor Who, they finally announced the titles of the 3 episodes and kind of gave us some insight of what the 3 episodes are going to be ahead of the 60th anniversary special. They still haven't given exact dates, but we're pretty sure they're going to take place consecutively in the weeks leading up to the official 60th anniversary in November. And the 3 titles for those episodes are The Star Beast, Wild Blue Yonder, and The Giggle. So we will see where that leads ahead of the 60th anniversary. But that being said, that's all the roundup of the week. Let's now get into Avatar: The Last Airbender, and a little bit we'll be talking about The Legend of Korra. So I want to start with this sheet here because it's taking up a lot of space on my computer, and I want to close it as soon as I can to make sure we don't lose anything on this live stream. But this is a sheet I call Leadership History. Now this massive sheet this massive workbook rather, we will go into more detail in our politics live stream next week. Because basically it's got a list of rulers from every country in the world. It's not finished by any means, but you have major countries like Australia, and we'll go through all of the world leaders in the history of these countries. I have China pulled up right now, but in this sheet, Leadership History, I also have an Avatar section. On the left here, we have known avatars, and on the right side here, we have known Fire Lords. So hopefully my face doesn't take up most of your screen here, but what we know about the Avatar, the first Avatar was a firebender from a fire lion turtle. This was 10,000 years before Legend of Korra, a man by the name of Avatar Wan, who learned the elements. If you've never seen the beginnings episodes in season 2 of Legend of Korra, that's where his backstory is really portrayed. They don't give us an age of his death, so ignore this little age section here, but he was born approximately in the year negative 9,850 before Sozin's Comet. And like I said, we don't know his death. We don't know who he was immediately followed by, so I should actually add a little break here. Add table rows above. And I will do that. Give it a quick second. It's going to take some time there. But then eventually there was an avatar called Gun, and we know nothing about them except their name. Same with, eventually there was an avatar called Salai, and we actually don't know the order of these two. We know they existed. I believe it was mentioned in the like the Kyoshi novels or the Yang Chen novels, but we know nothing about them. The wiki gives very little information other than their names. Eventually, we came to another fire avatar named Seto, and he was a firebender during a time in which the Fire Nation was under extreme political turmoil, as well as a ton of natural disasters going on, and society in the Fire Nation as a whole was in serious turmoil. Now, what Seto did was he was basically elected as a politician. So his role as Avatar was to save the Fire Nation, keep the Fire Nation together, and unify it, and that's what he did during his lifetime. So a very kind of small-scale Avatar. And he was succeeded in an unknown year by who we know as Avatar Yang Chen. Now, we first get introduced to Yang Chen officially in the show during the finale episodes. Aang meets her. We see her, I think, for the first time in, it's either the Avatar Roku episode in season 1, or we for sure see her in season 1 of the show. But we hear from her and learn about her for the first time in the finale of the entire show, season 3. She was born in the Western Air Temple, obviously an airbender, and we see statues of her in all of the Western and Eastern Air Temple. We know she died in the year 345. Her backstory is really developed in the Yang Chen novels that are currently being written by F.C. Yi, the same guy who writes the Kyoshi novels. It's kind of part of the same series. And whereas Seto was a very small-scale avatar, Yang Chen was a very large-scale avatar, focused a lot with the world in general and unifying the world. One thing you'll notice about avatars, and it used to be kind of a conspiracy theory, and now it's being more confirmed as we go on, but essentially, in the avatar cycle, we have one character who is known for doing one thing, and their successor basically corrects the mistakes of the predecessor. So, like I said, Seto is very small scale, and kind of not rejected the other nations, but very much focused on the Fire Nation as a whole. And so Yang Chen then picked up on his mistakes of kind of leaving the other 3 nations behind, and she became a very universal, globally loved avatar. She was succeeded by Avatar Kurik, who is a waterbender. We meet, I think for the first time in that same episode, the finale episode on the lion turtle. And his backstory is complex, but we know by the end of his life, he had fallen in love with another woman from, I think, the Southern Water Tribe. This says Northern Water Temple. It should say Water Tribe. And she was captured by Ko the Face Stealer, and we see her for the first time in the Siege of the North Part 2, the finale episode of Season 1. Kurik's big story then, whereas Yang Chen was very universal and focused on humanity, her downfall came in her focus of humanity rather than the unification of humans and spirits. So Kurik then picked up on her ignoring of the spirits and did a lot in cooperating or fighting against the spirits, and that is where his conflict with Ko the Face Stealer came in. His downfall was he was a little too loose with life and loose with the rules. He was very much a go-with-the-flow kind of person, not really a hippie lifestyle, but very much a almost hedonistic lifestyle. Did not like playing by the rules, that sort of thing, which was then picked up by Kyoshi. Kyoshi was born in the year 312. There was actually a false avatar, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head. It's the focus of the first Kyoshi novel. They crowned a false avatar, and eventually, by the time Kyoshi was about 18, 19 years old, they realized their mistake and crowned her, or entitled her officially, the successor to Avatar Kurik as the Earth Avatar. Kyoshi picked up from Kurik's mistakes of being too loose with things, was a very, very much uptight avatar, and she basically dominated the world with her power. She didn't, I wouldn't say overstepped her boundaries, but she was in control of the world. She got rid of Qin the Conqueror. She unified the Earth Kingdom. She preserved Ba Sing Se and Earth Kingdom history by creating the Dai Li, which we see repercussions from during Aang's time. Very much in the know. And for the life of me, there is a connection between Kyoshi and Roku. And it's not coming to me right now. But there is a failure in Kyoshi's avatar ship that would go on to be addressed during Roku's time. One of those being the development of technology in the Fire Nation, and Roku failing to act against Sozin. So we know Roku and his backstory very, very well. It's developed in season 1 of the show, and it's really developed in season 3 of the show. We know that he was best friends with Avatar Sozin, and his inability to act on Sozin and the Fire Nation colonies and Sozin's conquest of the world would lead to not only his death, but then the 100-Year War, which is picked up during Aang's time. We see Aang, of course, the protagonist of the first show. He was born in the year -12 before Sozin's comet. And then, of course, he is frozen in the iceberg, is revived in the year 88 after, and then lives into the year 153. He dies, I shouldn't say young, but fairly young in comparison to past avatars when you look at biological age. And this isn't accurate. Korra isn't actually like dead. But then he's succeeded by Korra, who is the water-bending avatar, the protagonist of the second show. Moving over then to Fire Lords. The first Fire Lord we ever hear of is a man by the name of Yosor. We don't know anything about him, but then eventually he is succeeded by a man called Gonryu, who is succeeded by a man called Cheryu, who is succeeded by one of his sons, Zoryu. This takes place during Seto's time and into Yang Chen's era. So by the Yang Chen novels, Zoryu is the Fire Lord of that time. We know of Sozin's father. We've never seen him. We don't know his name, but he, of course, died in the year 58, was succeeded by his son, Sozin. Sozin is the avatar during Roku's time and leading into the 100 Years' War. He is the Fire Lord responsible for the genocide of the air nomads. He died in the year 20 after Sozin's comet. So he was 102 years old. These dates are not the original dates in the show. It is mentioned that Azulon is Avatar for, I think, 38 years or 37 years in the show. This has been retconned. It doesn't make sense in the show. It was a mistake that the writers made and has since been corrected in official Avatar media outside. But Sozin was succeeded by his son Azulon. Azulon became Fire Lord in the year 20. He was born presumably around the time of Sozin's comet, succeeded his father, and served as Fire Lord for 75 years, was married to Ila. They had 2 kids, Iroh and Ozai. Iroh was his proclaimed heir as the eldest son, and then he was assassinated by his daughter-in-law Ursa after he... The backstory, you'll be familiar in the episode Zuko Alone. I believe it's the episode that they come to terms with this. Ozai tried to usurp Iroh as the heir to the throne, being the second son. He doesn't have a claim to that. Iroh's son died in the Battle of Ba Sing Se, and Ozai approached Azulon and asked to be given the right of heir to the throne now that Iroh didn't have any children. Azulon was taken aback by this, and he said as punishment for doing something so borderline treasonous, he was going to kill Zuko to get back at Ozai. This was revealed to Ursa, and Ursa, in order to save her son Zuko, agreed to poison Azulon on Ozai's behalf, and then they basically forged a proclamation of Azulon, making Ozai the official heir to the throne. So Ursa was banished, saved Zuko's life, and Ozai then became the successor to Azulon and Fire Lord in the year 95. He only served for 5 years. We see, obviously, one of these years during the Avatar series and is succeeded by his daughter. He basically gives up the title of Fire Lord to become the global Phoenix King in the year 100 when Sozin's Comet returns. He is about 46 when he becomes the Fire Lord, and 51 when he is relinquished that title. Azula is, I can't remember the timeline, if it's a day or a week or what is implied to take place during the finale episodes. But very short term as Fire Lord, obviously succeeds Ozai. Ozai becomes Phoenix King. Azula becomes Fire Lord. At her coronation, she is challenged by her brother Zuko, who then becomes Fire Lord upon defeating Azula and Aang taking over as Avatar. He rules for 67 years. He is still alive by the end of Korra, but he has abdicated in favor of his daughter Izumi. Izumi is the Fire Lord we see in Korra. She is still alive and has one known heir, her son Iroh, General Iroh, who we see in the show, voiced by Dante Bosco, the original voice of Zuko. We see him in the show. Presumably, he will be the next Fire Lord. So that's all for this leadership history sheet that I want to go over. Now let's turn our attention then to this sheet called installments. Give me one sec here. Forgot to save it. The sheet called installments. Now this is a list of every episode in the series. And I have all 7 seasons of the 2 shows on here, but I only have the 3 seasons of the original show completely filled out. I have the episode title, who directed it, who wrote the episode, the primary villain or antagonist, the location, a guest actor who appears in the episodes who probably doesn't appear in another episode, and then the original release date. So Book 1, Water, of course, we have the first episode, Boy in the Iceberg, was directed by Dave Filoni, written by the 2 showrunners, which are Michael Dante Di Martino and Brian Konietzko. Interesting to note, Brian Konietzko never wrote an episode by himself. So Michael Dante Di Martino did. Brian Konietzko never did by himself, but he operated as one of the 2 showrunners. The primary villain of the first 2 episodes is Zuko. I should include Avatar Returns in this. They were both directed by Dave Filoni, both written by Mike and Brian. Primary villain is Zuko, takes place at the South Pole. Guest actor in both is Melendi Britt, who played, I believe, Gran, and it aired on a Monday, which I actually remember where I was when Avatar aired. I was in my basement, just shy of my 6th birthday. Yeah, I would have been shy of my 6th birthday, and I watched it with my mom and my brother. I remember actually very vividly the introduction to the episode. I can't remember what the interlude show was called. Nickelodeon used to have kind of these in-between or hype shows that they did, and I don't remember if it was Nick Picks or what the name of the show was, but I remember the gimmick that they had was Pick Boy, who was this superhero character that Nickelodeon had at the time as kind of a mascot for their channel. I can't remember if he didn't want the episode to air or if he just kept screwing up airing the episode, but basically they had copies of the tape, like the VHS tape of the original Avatar premiere, which was these 2 episodes back to back. And Pick-Boy kept destroying the tapes, or I can't remember if it was accidentally on purpose, but he kept destroying the tapes. And finally, they basically restrained Pick-Boy after he had destroyed like 3 or 4 versions of the tape. And finally they aired it. And I remember watching it and thinking it was the funniest thing. I was 5 years old and I thought it was great. And finally they aired this episode on a Monday evening in 2005. And I fell in love with this show. And then of course it was succeeded at the end of the week by the Southern Air Temple, which was directed by Lauren McMullen, written by Michael Dante Di Martino. The primary villain in the Southern Air Temple is Zhao, as an antagonist to Zuko. Most of the episode takes place at the Southern Air Temple. A guest actor in this episode is Sab Shimono, who plays Monkey Atso. He would reappear later on in the series, not a ton, but in a couple episodes. This aired on Friday, February 25th, 4 days after the debut of the series. Then a week later, we got the Warriors of Kyoshi. I remember where I was when this aired too. It was I remember watching it the Saturday morning following. So March 5th, 2005, I watched it at about, 10 in the morning in my parents' bedroom. It was directed by Giancarlo Volpe. I hope I am pronouncing his name correctly. Writer was Nick Malice. Is this the only episode he ever wrote? I think it is. I think it's the only episode he ever wrote for the series. Primary villain is Zuko. It takes place on Kyoshi Island. You'll notice that these are color coordinated for which nation they take place in. So this is the first episode that takes place mainly in the Earth Kingdom. Guest actor is Gillian Henry. And then this took place, or this aired on Friday, March 4th, 2005. King of Omashu, 2 weeks later, on March 18th, was directed by Anthony Leoy, written by John O'Brien, who writes a lot of bad episodes for the series. He does have some good ones in there, and we'll talk about that more in season 3. Primary villain is Boomy. For most of the episode, we see him as the antagonist. Takes place in Omashu. Guest actor is Kevin Ning, who plays the young Boomy. Imprisoned. 2 weeks later. No, excuse me, one week later. Directed by Dave Filoni again. Written by Matthew Hubbard. The primary villain is the Warden, who is voiced by George Takei. Takes place in a mining village in the Earth Kingdom. I'll go like that. And aired on March 25th, 2005. Then, 2 weeks later, we got the first half of the Winter Solstice, called The Spirit World. Was directed by Lauren McMullen, again, the same director as the Southern Air Temple. Was written by Aaron Ahaz. This was his first episode that he wrote for the series. Primary villain or antagonist for the episode is Heibai. Obviously, we understand Heibai by the end of the episode, but he does appear for most of the episode as the antagonist. Takes place in Senlin Village. Guest actor is Mike Hagawara. Aired April 8th, 2005. A week later, we got part 2 of The Winter Solstice, Avatar Roku, directed by Giancarlo Volpe. Written by Michael Dante DiMartino. Primary villain is Zhao. First episode that takes place in the Fire Nation we see on Crescent Island. Guest actor is Clement von Frankenstein. And aired April 15th, 2005. 2 weeks later, The Waterbending Scroll, directed by Anthony Leoy. Written by John O'Brien. Primary villain are the pirates. Takes place on the CD Merchant's Pier, and a guest actor is Jack Angel, who plays the pirate captain. Aired April 29th, 2005. Halfway through the series, we get to Jet, directed by Dave Filoni. All of the good episodes, fortune teller, but most of the good episodes are directed by Dave Filoni. Written by James Egan, his first of the series. Does he ever write another one? He does not. This is the only episode written by James Egan. It does feel different. Primary villain is, of course, Jet. We see by the end of the episode. Takes place in Gaipan Village, which is I think a colony town of the Fire Nation in the Earth Kingdom. Guest actor Crawford Wilson as Jet. Aired May 6th, 2005. 2 weeks later, we get one of the worst episodes, if not the worst episode, in Avatar, The Great Divide, directed by Giancarlo Volpe, written by John O'Brien. He does like writing bad episodes. Primary antagonists are the Canyon Crawlers, takes place in the Great Divide Canyon. Guest actor is Roberta Farkas, and aired May 20th. Then, 2 weeks later, The Storm, directed by Lauren McMullen, written by Aaron Ahaz. Primary villain, it's very much a man versus nature episode, so I put the antagonist as The Storm. Takes place in a harbor town, and guest actor is James Hong, who plays one of the air monks, or whatever you want to call the Council of Elders in the Southern Air Temple. Aired June 3rd, 2005, just before my 6th birthday. Blue Spirit aired 2 weeks later, directed by Dave Filoni, written by Mike and Brian. Primary villain is Zhao, takes place in Taku Village. Guest actor Jody Carlisle. Aired June 17th, 2005. The Fortune Teller, also directed by Dave Filoni, written by John O'Brien and Aaron Ahaz. This is probably the worst episode Aaron Ahaz wrote. Primary villain, it's another man versus nature episode, is the Volcano. Takes place in Makapu Village, and guest actor Tsai Chin. This one aired a significant amount of time after the Blue Spirit. They took about 3 months off and returned in September, on the 23rd of September. Then Bato of the Water Tribe, 2 weeks later, directed by Giancarlo Volpe. Written by Ian Wilcox. Is this his only episode? It is. Primary villain of this episode is Zuko. This takes place in the Abbey Village, or near the Abbey Village. Guest actor Richard McGonigal, who played Bato. Aired October 7th. 2 weeks later, The Deserter, directed by Lauren McMullen, written by Tim Hedrick, who would go on to write more episodes in Season 2. Primary villain is Zhao, takes place in the Colonial Village. In the Earth Kingdom, guest actor is Keone Young, released October 21st. 4 more episodes in season 1. We have The Northern Air Temple, directed by Dave Filoni, written by Elizabeth Ehaz. That's the wife of Aaron Ehaz. This was her first episode she wrote for the show. Primary villain is Chin, who is the war minister of the Fire Nation. It takes place at the Northern Air Temple, which you could argue is in the Earth Kingdom. I mean, it is, but I have included it as part of the Air Nation territory there. Guest actor is Clyde Kusatsu, and aired November 4th. 2 weeks later, we got The Waterbending Master, directed by Giancarlo Volpe, written by Michael Dante DiMartino. Primary antagonist in this episode is Master Paku. It takes place at the North Pole. Guest actor is Lucille Bliss. Aired November 18th. And then 2 weeks later, we got the two-parter that aired together. First Siege of the North Part 1, directed by Lauren McMullen, written by John O'Brien. This is probably the best episode John O'Brien wrote for the show. Primary villain is Zhao, takes place at the North Pole. Guest actor Ben Diskin, aired December 2nd. And then Part 2 aired immediately after, directed by Dave Filoni, written by Aaron Ehaz. Zhao is the primary antagonist, takes place at the North Pole, and guest actor Eric Todd Dellums. We only got 3 months off between seasons 1 and 2. They return with the Avatar State, directed by Giancarlo Volpe. Had multiple writers, upwards of 3. I will put the word multiple there. A lot of people had their hands on this one. It kind of shows, to be honest with you, but the primary villain is General Fong, who is voice acted by Daniel Day Kim, who is actually appearing in the live action show as Fire Lord Ozai, which I think is a good casting. Takes place at Fong's Fortress in the Earth Kingdom and aired March 17th. The following week, we got The Cave of Two Lovers, directed by Lauren McMullen, written by Josh Hamilton, not the baseball player who beats his daughter, but Joshua Hamilton, the writer. That is a niche reference for all of the Texas Rangers fans on my channel. The primary villain, there isn't really one. It's just the nature of the cave. It takes place in the Kolau Mountains. Guest actor is Derek Bosco, the brother of Dante Bosco, who plays Zuko. He plays the heavier set of the nomads. I can't remember. He's kind of the comedy, not the head comedy relief character, but he's one of the nomads there. That aired March 24th of 2006. Return to Omashu 2 weeks later, directed by Ethan Spalding. I believe that's the first one he directed. Written by Elizabeth Ehaz. Primary villain is Azula for the first time. Takes place in Omashu. Guest actor Paul Eiding. Aired April 7th. The week later, we got The Swamp, directed by Giancarlo Volpe, written by Tim Hedrick. Primary villain for most of the episode is who's one of the Foggy Swamp tribesmen. Location, Foggy Swamp. Guest actor William H. Bassett, who I believe was the voice of Who. Aired April 14th. Avatar Day came 2 weeks later, directed by Lauren McMullen. John O'Brien wrote this one. Shocker. No surprise there. Bad episode, written by John O'Brien. Primary villain are the Rough Rhinos. This takes place in Chin Village. Guest actor James Hong returns as a different character. This time he is playing the mayor of the town. I can't remember the character's actual name, but that was released on April 28th. Just 1 week later, we got The Blind Bandit. As a wrestling fan, I, of course, love this episode. Directed by Ethan Spalding, written by Michael Dante DiMartino. Primary villain of the episode is Shin Fu. It takes place in Gowling Village. A guest actor is Mick Foley, the wrestler who actually played the boulder in this episode. Aired May 5th, Cinco de Mayo of 2006. Then Zuko Alone, directed by Lauren McMullen, written by Elizabeth Ehaz. She writes great episodes. Primary villain of this episode is Gao, who is the leader of the soldiers in the town. It just takes place in a plains village there. Guest actor playing Gao is Gary Sturgis. Aired May 12th, 2006. 2 weeks later, we resumed with The Chase, directed by Giancarlo Volpe, who basically directed every other episode in this season. It was kind of a three-way trade, actually, between him, Lauren, and Ethan. And then the final episode was actually directed by Michael Dante DiMartino. Interesting. But anyways, this episode, written by Joshua Hamilton, the writer. Primary villain, Azula, takes place in Tuzin, the abandoned village. There is no guest actor. All of the actors in this episode and the next are part of the primary cast. aired May 26th, 2006. And then a week later, we resumed with Bitter Work, directed by Ethan Spalding, written by Aaron Ahaz. Primary villain is just nature. It has a lot of similarities with The Storm, actually. It's not as much a flashback episode, but tonally and with the villain that they're facing, or the antagonist that they're facing in the episode, it's very much a man versus nature episode. Most of it takes place in an Earth Kingdom quarry, and it aired June 2nd, 2006, right before my 7th birthday. The Library, 2 weeks later, was directed by Giancarlo, written by Jean O'Brien, which is weird. This is actually probably my favorite episode that he wrote. I mentioned that Siege of the North Part 1 is probably the best episode he wrote. I don't know. Library actually might be better. Primary villain is Wan Shi-tong, who is voice acted by Hector Elizondo. Primary location is in the Siwang Desert at Wan Shi-tong's library. That aired back-to-back with The Desert on July 14th, 2006. So The Desert, directed by Lauren, written by Tim Hedrick. Primary villain are the Sandbenders. You could argue it's another man versus nature episode. It takes place in the Siwang Desert, and guest actor Bill Bolender. Took about a 2-month break, returned again in September with The Serpent's Pass, which aired back-to-back with The Drill. The first one was directed by Ethan Spalding, written by Josh Hamilton and Michael Dante DiMartino. Primary villain is the Serpent, takes place in The Serpent's Pass. Guest actor is Brian Tochi, who plays the father of the group. And then, of course, same day, The Drill, directed by Giancarlo, written by Mike and Brian, and primary villain is Azula. It takes place outside the walls of Ba Sing Se. Guest actor is Barry Denon. A week later, we pick up with City of Walls and Secrets, directed by Lauren, written by Tim Hedrick. Primary villain is Long Feng. I didn't include Clancy Brown as the guest actor because Long Feng appears a number of times in this series, but I added guest actor George Chung. Then the following week, we had the Tales of Ba Sing Se. The whole episode, for the most part, was directed by Ethan Spalding, but each section had one, if not multiple, writers. There are various villains and antagonists throughout the stories. A guest actor I included was Marcella Lentz Pope. 2 weeks later, we got Appa's Lost Days, directed by Giancarlo, written by Elizabeth. Primary villain, there's multiple. Azula does appear in this episode, but I figured the Sandbenders posed the greatest threat for Appa going forward in the episode. Long Feng also appears at the end. I put guest actor as Dwight Schultz. We skip all the way to November 3rd, so 3 weeks later, we got Lake Laogai, directed by Lauren, written by Tim Hedrick. Primary villain is Long Feng. Takes place at Lake Laogai, and guest actor is Kurt Fuller. The Earth King aired 2 weeks later, directed by Ethan Spalding, written by John O'Brien. I wouldn't say this is a bad episode. It's just a bit of a setup episode. So I wouldn't say John knocked it out of the park with this one. But primary villain is Long Feng. Again, takes place in Ba Sing Se and around. Jennifer Cohn appears as Zuko and Azula's mother. Aired November 17th. And then 2 weeks later, back-to-back, we got The Guru and The Crossroads of Destiny, both airing on December 1st of 2006. First half is directed by Giancarlo Volpe, second half by Michael Dante DiMartino. And I don't want to say that's his directing debut, but it is for the show, and I wouldn't be surprised if it actually was his directing debut. First half was written by Mike and Brian, second half by Aaron Ahaz. Azula is the primary villain in both episodes. The location... Both episodes take place in Ba Sing Se, but I put for the first one the Eastern Air Temple because that's where most of the episode takes place. There isn't really a guest actor who hasn't appeared before in Crossroads of Destiny, but Brian George appears in the first half as the Guru. We move on to Season 3, which aired all 9 whole months later, so we got a big gap. Of course, they used Comic-Con of 2007 to really hype up the final season of Avatar. The Awakening was directed by Giancarlo Volpe, written by Aaron Ahaz. There isn't really a villain in The Awakening. It takes place on Roku's Island and in the seas surrounding it. Guest actor Joanna Brady, who appears in a cameo as Princess Yue. That was released on the day after the fall equinox, September 21st, 2007. Then we got The Headband a week later, directed in his Avatar directing debut by Joaquim dos Santos, who appeared multiple times throughout, including the 2 finale episodes. Written by John O'Brien. Shocker. I had a person in my comment section on my Avatar episode ranking video say that The Headband was ranked too low. I don't think so. I think if it was a better episode, I would have ranked it higher. It's a fun episode, but it's very inconsequential. I like kind of the underlying aspects to it, but I would not be surprised if someone else wrote the colonialism aspects into the episode rather than John O'Brien, because that's really just not his writing style. Primary villain is the headmaster of the school and just the school staff in general. It takes place at a Fire Nation bazaar. A guest actor in this episode, this is, I'm going to really date myself here, Matthew Underwood. This is the only episode in Avatar he appears in. He played Logan, who's kind of the jock cool kid in Zoe 101. So if you're familiar with Zoe 101, which was big at the time that this episode aired, he plays Logan in Zoe 101. He appears as the guest actor as I can't remember. He's the boyfriend, the kind of the primary child antagonist, who I could have put him as the main antagonist of this episode. That aired, like I said, a week later on September 28th of 2007. The Painted Lady the next week, which I'm shocked isn't written by John O'Brien. This was directed by Ethan Spalding and written by Josh Hamilton. Primary villain is the general who appears in the episode. Location is Zhanghui, which is the name of the town. Guest actor is Daniel Riordan. Aired October 5th. So by the time we got to season 3, it was airing pretty much weekly until the mid-season finale. Sokka's Master came a week later, directed by Giancarlo, written by Tim Hedrick. Primary antagonist, especially by the end of the episode, if there is one in this episode, is Pian Dao. It takes place in the village of Shujing, and Pian Dao is voiced by Robert Patrick, who you'll be familiar with as the T-1000, or the primary villain in Terminator 2. He appears in a lot else, but that's what I know him from, is the villain in Terminator 2. That aired on October 12th. October 19th, we got The Beach, directed by Joaquim dos Santos, written by Katie Matilla. This is the only episode she writes for the show. Primary villains, if there are any, are Chan and Ranjan, and Chan is voiced by Eric Von Detten. That takes place on Ember Island. Then the week later, we got Avatar and the Fire Lord, directed by Ethan Spalding. They did a 3-week cycle between them going into the finale. This was written by, I've taken out her maiden name for most of these, so I'll keep it consistent. That was written by Elizabeth Ahaz. Primary villain is Sozin. Takes place in and around the Fire Nation. Guest actor is Ron Perlman, who plays the older version of Sozin, who acts as basically the narrator for half of this episode. That aired on the 26th. A week later, on the 2nd of November, we got The Runaway, which was written by Josh Hamilton. He also doesn't have a great run of episodes in Season 2. Primary villain is Combustion Man. Takes place in Fire Fountain City, which is just the name that the wiki gives. A guest actor in this episode is Joe Alasky, who I believe plays the scam artist that plays the rock game with Toph. Week later, November 9th, we got The Puppet Master, directed by Joaquim dos Santos, written by Tim Hedrick. Primary villain is Hama, who is voiced by Tress McNeil. Takes place in Hama's village. Week later, Nightmares and Daydreams, directed by Ethan Spalding, written by, take a guess, it's John O'Brien. Primary villain is Ozai, or at least the dream version of Ozai. Takes place on the Black Cliffs. There isn't a guest actor in this episode. Then 2 weeks later, we got the mid-season finale back-to-back, The Invasion and The Eclipse. First half directed by Giancarlo, second half by Joaquim. First half written by Michael, second half written by Aaron. Ozai operates as the primary villain for both of these episodes. Takes place in the Fire Nation capital city. An interesting thing to note that we'll talk about in the last workbook that we have for this live stream today. Serena Williams, the tennis player Like, the Serena Williams appears in both shows, actually, in a cameo role. She was a huge fan of the Avatar series and actually, I think, wrote to either Mike or Brian and asked if she could, like, cameo. And so she appears in the first half of Day of Black Sun as, I think the character's name is Ming. She's the female guard that brings Iroh his lunch before he breaks out. He basically warns her to go home, otherwise he's going to break out and hurt her, kind of thing. She is voiced by Serena Williams, the greatest female tennis player ever. Fun fact. Immediately followed, of course, by The Eclipse. We mentioned that. And a guest actor I have in here is Wayne Duvall, who basically plays that character's superior. I think he's the warden of that prison. Then we took a massive 8-month break and returned in July. The last half of Avatar: The Last Airbender aired in a single week. So we got 10 episodes in 5 days. And I actually remember this. It was a huge deal because I did not watch live the first half of season 3. And as soon as Avatar was coming back on July 14th, it was Nickelodeon's biggest deal ever. And they hyped it up immensely. It came back on a Monday and finished on that Saturday. I remember where I was that Saturday. I was at my grandmother's house. I don't know why I was there. I'm sure my dad was out of town or going to a concert or something. But it was me alone with my grandmother. And she fell asleep in her chair watching whatever she was watching. And I sat in her kitchen on a little tiny colored TV screen. And for 2 straight hours, I watched the Avatar finale on July 19th, 2008. I remember it very explicitly. It was a very nice day where I was, and I was stuck inside, my eyes glued to the TV watching Avatar. But we returned, like I said, that Monday, July 14th, with the Western Air Temple, directed by Ethan Spalding, written by Elizabeth Ehas and Tim Hedrick. Primary villain in that episode is Combustion Man. Takes place at the Western Air Temple. We don't have a guest actor. The Firebending Masters aired the next day on July 15th. Directed by Giancarlo, written by John O'Brien. It's a decent episode. Primary antagonist, I guess, is the Chief of the Sun Warriors, who is voiced by Robert Ito. It takes place in the Sun Warrior Ruined City. Aired Tuesday, July 15th. Wednesday, we got a 2-parter, back-to-back, The Boiling Rock Part 1 and 2. First half was directed by Joaquim and written by Mei Chan in her only episode of the show, I believe. The 2 halves are written by 2 separate people. Second half was written by Josh Hamilton. So no surprise why the episode feels very inconsistent. The Warden, voiced by Wade Williams, is the primary villain of both episodes. We also have an appearance by guest actor Roger Rose in the second half. Takes place at the Boiling Rock Prison. Aired Wednesday, July 16th of 2008. Then The Southern Raiders on July 17th, that Thursday. Directed by Joaquim. Written by Elizabeth Ehas. Primary villain is Yan Ra. Takes place in Yan Ra's village. Guest actor is Tim Dang, who plays Yan Ra. The next day, the final episode before the finale, we got the Ember Island Players. Director Giancarlo had multiple writers, upwards of 4, I know for sure. Primary villain in this episode is the Plays version of Ozai. Takes place on Ember Island. Guest actor playing actress Aang, or actor Aang. Playing the actress who plays Aang is Tara Strong, who's a comedian. You would be familiar if you looked her up. I genuinely couldn't tell you what she's been in. She's been in a lot, and she's got a very familiar face. Like, you'd be able to recognize her if you looked her up and saw her. So she appeared in this episode as the voice of actor Aang. That aired on the Friday, and then Saturday, of course, we got the 4-part finale. First part was directed by Ethan Spalding, written by Michael Dante DiMartino, primary villain Ozai, which is the case for the rest of the series. Takes place on Ember Island, guest actor Nick Jameson. Then second quarter, Giancarlo Volpe is the director, written by Aaron Ahaz, takes place in Ba Sing Se. Guest actor is Kevin Michael Richardson, who we'll talk about in the next sheet here a little more in detail. And then third part and fourth part were both directed by Joaquin and both written by Mike and Brian. Take place in the Earth Kingdom in various locations. Guest actor Jen Cohn returns for the flashback, or not the flashback, but the hallucination of Zuko and Azula's mom. And then Keone Young appears in the finale as the Fire Sage. Like I said, I don't have everything here for Legend of Korra, but Legend of Korra, there were 12 episodes per season. The first season aired in the spring of 2012, the second season in the fall of 2013, and then I don't have anything for season 6 and 7, so I do apologize. I have to end my narration there. Last but not least is a sheet that I worked fairly aggressively on, and it's still not finished, so I have a lot yet to do on this sheet here, but this is called Casts. Eventually I'm going to do it for a whole bunch of shows I like, but right now I just have most of Avatar. Now, I mentioned I am missing a ton of characters on here, but this is essentially a cast table for all 7 seasons of Avatar and who played which character in which season. I don't have one-off characters or most of like the secondary cast in Legend of Korra. But in alphabetical order here, let's go down the line. So Aang is voiced in the Last Airbender series in all 3 seasons by Zach Tyler Eisen, who also appears as, let's find him. He plays the circus boy that we see in Appa's Lost Days in season 2. He plays the Ember Island kid who makes fun of Zuko's scar being on the wrong side in the Ember Island episode. And I think that's all I have of him. He did a lot of like extra voices, but they don't really give any details on that. So I think that's the last time I have him on here. But then Aang does appear in the first 2 seasons of Legend of Korra, portrayed by D.B. Sweeney. I lied to you. Tara Strong doesn't play actress Aang. She plays actress Azula. Actress Aang is played by Rachel Dratch, who also appears... I don't know if she appears anywhere else in the show. I'm going to go through most of these. No, I don't see her in anything I have in the rest of the show. Tara Strong, like I mentioned, actress Azula. And then actor Boomy is played by D. Bradley Baker. Now, you might know D. Bradley Baker for a variety of things. A lot of people know him as the voice of Klaus, the fish in American Dad. He is best known as a creature voice actor. So in Avatar: The Last Airbender, almost every creature, so like Appa, Momo, all of the creatures from Legend of Korra, are very likely going to be voiced by D. Bradley Baker, but he is also a human voice actor in his own right. The most prominent of the guest roles that I can think of for D. Bradley Baker in Avatar, he is the main... What's the name of the primary hippie in Cave of Two Lovers? He's the one that sings the song. I think he's the voice of Varric in Legend of Korra, and I think he's also the narrator of Legend of Korra, but he appears in the Ember Island Players episode as actor Boomy, actor Jet, actor Ozai. He plays Appa in the show. Boomju, one of the spirits. He was the original voice of Aang's son, Boomy. He was replaced for the later series by Richard Reel. He played the bunny spirit, the butler. Chong, I think, is the name of that hippie character. An Earth Empire captain, an evacuee in Series 4, a helmsman in Series 4 of Legend of Korra. Juicy, Juji. I'm looking here. D. Bradley Baker. Naga, Oogie, Pabu, Pokey, the pyro guy in season 2, the radio host, like I mentioned. Looking for more. TLOK, he actually plays in season 1. White Lotus Guard in season 3. Yeah, so D. Bradley Baker, there are a lot of very prominent voice actors. The two that I can really point out as having a ton of different roles throughout both seasons. Him in both series, actually. He's the most prominent voice actor in both series. And then in the first series, Grey Delisle, who you'll know for a variety of things, mostly Azula in the show. But she played a whole variety of other characters. She also appeared as actress Katara. She also appeared as the banished servant we see in the finale. That can't be right. I don't think that's right. She played Intense Woman in season 3 of Legend of Korra. She played Kuan's wife. She played Michi in season 2 of Avatar: The Last Airbender. She played the Mushroom Spirit in Legend of Korra. She played Ta Min in that's Roku's wife. She played. That's all I have so far. But she's a very prolific voice actor. You'll know her from basically every Cartoon Network show that aired in the last 20 years. She had a role in Mindy. She played Vicky in Fairly Odd Parents. She had a bunch of roles in Danny Phantom, I think. And actually, one thing I thought was fascinating, pretty sure she appears in Star Wars The Clone Wars, but I couldn't tell you who. But let me find it here. Give me one sec. I have a video game. So Grey Delisle, you might also know her as Grey Griffin, or Grey Griffin Delisle, is one of the most prolific female voice actresses ever. She appears in everything. Go look up. There's a documentary, or kind of like a short film documentary, or special about her and her roles in the past. Just go look her up on YouTube. You'll probably find it. But this game here, I don't know if you can see it with my lamp, but it is called Jumpstart Languages for ages 3 to 6. This is a computer game that I have for my youth that I played a lot. That is basically like a childhood language learner. And it came out in 2001. And it is hosted by two characters, like a cartoon cat and a cartoon, I can't remember what the other character is. And it doesn't credit her as a voice actress. It doesn't give cast credits at all, but I am almost certain that it is Grey Delisle's voice. And I discovered that I replayed this a few years ago just kind of to relive my childhood. And as soon as I heard her voice, I went, I think that's Grey Delisle. And it wouldn't surprise me given the fact that this came out in 2001 and her career really sparked in the early 2000s. Was she the voice of Jenny from My Life as a Teenage Robot? I can't remember. I want to look her up real quick and just tell you all of like the major roles she's had. Grey Delisle. Grey Delisle. She's currently the voice of Sherry and Terry on The Simpsons, as well as Martin Prince after Russie Taylor's death. But career. Grey Delisle filmography. Voiceover roles. Daphne in Scooby-Doo in the early 2000s. Betty Rubble in The Flintstones in the early 2000s. Linda in the Powerpuff Girls. Emily Elizabeth Howard in Clifford's Really Big Movie. So yeah, her first like big break was as Daphne in Scooby-Doo in the early 2000s. Let's see here. She played Wasp in the Ultimate Avengers cartoon in the mid 2000s. Mandy in Bill and Mandy's in Bill and Mandy. Aquata in The Little Mermaid, Ariel's Beginning. Wubsy in Wow Wow Wubsy. Penny's mom in Bolt. RC in Transformers, the actual Transformers films. Betsy in Curious George. Black Canary in the DC cartoon universe. Barbara Gordon in Batman Year One. Lois Lane in the Justice League cartoons. Young Manchester in Superman vs. the Elite. Pepper Potts in the Marvel cartoons in the last 20 years. Where's television here? That was just films. She plays basically everybody in Johnny Bravo. She played a bunch of side characters in the Rugrats. Femme Fatale in the Powerpuff Girls. Roxanne in House of Mouse. Vicky, Tootie, Veronica, Chad, Miss Dimsdale, Principal Waxelplax, The Tooth Fairy, Marianne, Molly, Spatula Woman, Mrs. Claus, Tom Sawyer, Vicky the Kid, all of the version, basically almost every like side female character in the Fairly Odd Parents. The High Priestess in Samurai Jack, Mandy in Grim and Evil, Daphne, Scooby-Doo, Laura in Codename Kids Next Door. She doesn't play Jenny in My Life as a Teenage Robot. She plays Letta in My Life as a Teenage Robot. Asajj Ventress in Star Wars The Clone Wars. A ton of voices in Jimmy Neutron, but none of the main characters. She played Sam Manson in Danny Phantom, as well as Valerie Gray and Dora Mattingly. Downpour in Justice League Unlimited. This is becoming the Grey Delisle live stream. Vulture in the Batman animated series. Azula. Kaya. Katara. Tommen. Banished Servant Girl. Avatar Last Airbender. Heat Blast and Xylene in Ben 10. Riley in The Replacements. Wubsy in Wow Wow Wubsy. Frida Suarez in El Tigre. Juanita in Back at the Barnyard. Betty Brant in The Spectacular Spider-Man. Misleading in The Misadventures of Flapjack. Black Canary in Batman. Darla in Penguins of Madagascar. Scarlet in G.I. Joe. Brianna in Kick Buttowski. Judy Jones in Uncle Grandpa. She played a ton of characters in the Mad cartoon that appeared on Cartoon Network in the early 2010s. Desdemona in Regular Show. Kitty Catswell in Tough Puppy. Dreamer, Whisper, and Troya in Young Justice. Lola's mom in the Looney Tunes show, as well as Miss Prissy. Chitara in Thundercats. Aya in Green Lantern. Wonder Girl in Super Best Friends Forever. Mrs. Gleeful in Gravity Falls. Tana Nile in Ultimate Spider-Man. Chastity in Brickleberry. Basically every female character in Sanjay and Craig. Magpie in Beware the Batman. Minghua, Dark Scorpion Spirit, Spirit Mushroom, Kuan's Wife, Young Lin Beifan, Dark Spirit, and Lily in Legend of Korra. A bunch of female characters in the Boondocks. A bunch of female characters in Robot Chicken. And those are all the Cleopatra in Mr. Peabody and Sherman. Every female character in the Loud House for the most part. Maz Kanata in Lego Star Wars, the TV show. Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel in Avengers Assemble. Black Cat in Spider-Man, the animated series. Man and Sylvana in DuckTales, Mayor Crawford in Paradise PD, Madame Raz in She-Ra and the Princess of Power. Yeah, so I would say her two biggest roles are Azula and Daphne in the Scooby-Doo cartoons. She's played Daphne since basically 2001. Anyways, back to the sheet here. John DiMaggio, the comedian, they actually pulled in to play both actor Iroh and actor Toph in Ember Island Players. Basically, this entire column here is from Ember Island Players. Also, Scott Menville played actor Sokka. He appears in the show again as Scott Menville, the Ganjin tribesman, one of the Ganjin tribesmen in season 1, as well as Malu in season 1. There are a couple characters. I can't remember who they are just by their name. I do apologize. I am a huge Avatar fan, but there are so many side characters that I do actually forget about. Jenny Kwan plays actress Yue. She's the voice of Suki. And then Derek Bosco, who I mentioned as the heavier set of the hippies, appears again. He's the brother of Dante Bosco, who plays Zuko, but he plays actor Zuko. Jim Meskimen appears as an air acolyte. He also plays Batar Sr., a bathroom attendant in season 4. Where else? Daw, dispatcher, driver, a whole bunch of side roles. A hunter in season 2. I think in the beginnings episode. He plays G in season 1 of The Last Airbender, a Fire Nation soldier in season 1. Avatar Kurik is probably his most prominent role in the show. A post soldier in season 4. Reporter, Red Lotus guard, a sentry, a train conductor. Yeah, a whole bunch of side roles there for Jim Meskimen. Seychelle Gabriel plays Asami. Tsai Chin, Aunt Wu. The I Spirit is played by Jason Marsden, who also plays Juan in seasons 3 and 4. Let's see who else here. Anybody? Bueller. A settler in season 2 of Legend of Korra. Okay, and then we move on to, there's Great Alile again. Azulon is played by Walker Edmiston. Bolin is played by PJ Byrne. That's D. Bradley Baker again. Boomy, the original Boomy, the King Boomy from The Last Airbender, is played by Andre Sogliuzzo, who also appears as a Dai Li captain in season 3. An Earthbender captain in season 1. Hakoda, he also plays the father of Sokka and Katara. And I'm seeing if there's anything else he plays in the show here. So yeah, there's your fun fact of the day. Hakoda and King Boomy are played by the same voice actor. Richard Reel, I mentioned, plays Aang's son, Boomy. After season 1 of Legend of Korra, he's played by D. Bradley Baker in season 1. James Sia plays the Cabbage Merchant in seasons 1 and 2. He also voices, I know he has one more role in the show. Did I include it on here? Yes, he plays Oyaji, who is kind of the mayor and head guy of the village of Kyoshi. Phil Lamar appears in season 2 as a captured agent. He is better known, if I can find him here. Lamar, do. Why would that be the only role I have him as? Oh, he plays Kuwei, the Earth King, in seasons 2 and 3 of the show. Okay. Zack Taylor Rising. Greg Baldwin, who plays, after Mako's death, plays Iroh. Also appears as the voice of the grunts of Combustion Man. Then we move down to, there's Serena Williams. She plays a female sage. If you'll recall the beginnings episode in season 2 of Legend of Korra, she plays the female sage at the beginning of the episode who basically submerges Korra to reconnect her with her past lives. Mindy Sterling, you'll remember, you'll probably know her for her live action roles. She played, who's the teacher that they hate in iCarly? She also appeared in Ned's Declassified, but she's got a very distinct voice and a very distinct look. If you don't know who I'm talking about, feel free to look her up. Her name's Mindy Sterling. She plays a Fire Nation councilwoman in season 1 of Legend of Korra, but she is most known for playing Lin Beifong, the police chieftain and daughter of Toph Beifong in Legend of Korra. Then, where are we at here? Michael Dow appears as Haru in both season 1 and season 3. Jane Tiny plays Hu Ting, the Earth Queen, in season 3 of Legend of Korra. Mako, of course, plays Iroh in the first 2 seasons, up until Tales of Ba Sing Se. He actually might play for the entire season, but I know Greg Baldwin did dub a line in a few episodes of season 2, after Mako had already died. Iroh II, which is he's a general. He's the son of Fire Lord Izumi, is voiced by Dante Basco, who plays Zuko in the show. His mother, Izumi, is played by April Stewart. Jin, who is, I believe, is the girl Zuko falls in love with in episode 2 of... that doesn't sound right. I don't think that's right. But anyways, Jin is played by Marcella Lentz Pope. Jinora is played by Kiernan Shipka. Judy is played by Lauren Tom. Jennifer Hale voices June in seasons 1 and 3. Katara is voiced by Mae Whitman in the original show, and then in her appearances in Legend of Korra, she's voiced by Eva Marie Saint. Mae Whitman also, interestingly enough, plays Lu Ten, the son of Iroh, who only ever appears in speaking roles as a kid and is voiced by Mae Whitman, the same actress who plays Katara. She also appears as the Painted Lady. Now, I know you're thinking, well, yeah, of course, because Katara is the Painted Lady. But when the Painted Lady appears in actual form at the end of that really bad episode, she too is voiced by Mae Whitman. Ko, the Face Stealer, is voiced by Eric Todd Dellums. Korra is voiced by Janet Varney. Kuvira is voiced by Zelda Williams. I mentioned in, I think, the series ranking episode. Zelda Williams is the daughter of Robin Williams, the comedian, who, yes, is, of course, named after the Legend of Zelda games, because Robin Williams, the comedian, was a big fan of the Legend of Zelda, named his daughter Zelda, and Zelda Williams, in, I think, what was her first actual role, was the voice of Kuvira in seasons 3 and 4 of Legend of Korra. Kaya, that is the daughter of Aang and Katara, is voiced in seasons 2 through 4 by Lisa Edelstein. The lion turtle in the finale of Avatar The Last Airbender is voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson. You might know him for a variety of reasons. I actually know him best as the voice of, I think he plays Cleveland Jr. In the Cleveland Show and now in Family Guy. Big gentleman, very distinct look, very distinct voice when he speaks in his normal voice. He plays both the lion turtle and what's the name of Haru's dad? He also plays the tax collector in that same episode. But he voices Tyro, Haru's dad. Where were we at here? The Lion Turtle also appears in Season 2 of Legend of Korra, of course, in the Beginnings episode, voiced by Jim Cummings. Long Feng is voiced by Clancy Brown. You probably know him from Detroit Become Human. You might know him as his appearance as Lyndon B. Johnson in The Crown. You might also know him as Mr. Krabs, the voice of Mr. Krabs. Clancy Brown, what else does he appear in that you guys would know? He's in a whole bunch of stuff. Very distinct voice. Lex Luthor in the DC animated universe. Savage Opress in Star Wars The Clone Wars, which I mispronounced as Savage Opress in one of my Star Wars videos last week. I do apologize for that. He's the voice of Surtur, the big fire villain in Thor Ragnarok. Neo Cortex in Crash Bandicoot. He also appeared in John Wick Chapter 4, Starship Troopers, and Highlander. Anyways, so Long Feng is voiced by Mr. Krabs. I made a point of that in a last episode last week. Greg Baldwin, the same guy who plays Iroh, also plays a looter in Season 3. May is voiced by Cricket Lay. Mako is... This is, of course... Yeah, Mako from Legend of Korra is voiced by David Faustino. Janet Varney, who plays Korra, also appears as a character called May in Season 2 of Legend of Korra. There's Serena Williams appearing again as Ming, like I mentioned in our episodes video. There's Derek Bosco, again, the brother of Dante Bosco, appearing as Moku. That's the name of the larger set hippie fella. These are all repeats. And then we get Mark Hamill, who most people are aware of this, but if you weren't, now you know. Mark Hamill, who played Luke Skywalker, and also the voice of the animated Batman, the animated Joker in all of the animated Batman series since, I think, the early to mid-90s, played Ozai in the Last Airbender, seasons 1 through 3. He does appear in Season 1. A couple times, actually, in The Storm specifically, and also in the last episode. Prince Wu is voiced by Sunil Malhotra. Rava is voiced by April Stewart in both Seasons 2 and 3. Raiko is voiced by Spencer Garrett. James Garrett plays Roku in both The Last Airbender and Season 2 of Legend of Korra. Shainu is voiced by Nick Jameson. Shainu, I believe, is the Fire Sage. I think that's... No, it's General Shainu. He's a Fire Nation general who appears in Seasons 1 and 3 of The Last Airbender. Shiro, voiced by Jeff Bennett, is a character who appears constantly in Legend of Korra. Mindy Sterling also plays a shop owner in Season 4. Jack DeSena, his only role in the show is as Sokka. I mentioned Ron Perlman, the actor, plays the older version of Sozin. Suki is voiced by Jenny Kwan. Rami Malek, the Best Actor winner, who known for his roles in I, Robot and Night at the Museum, played a character called Tano, who I believe is one of the opponents in the Bending Ring in Season 1 of Legend of Korra. J.K. Simmons, you know as J. Jonah Jameson, or for his roles in like Whiplash, or the Farmers commercials, which I learned recently British people don't know about. Someone made a Farmers reference in a video. I won't go down that rabbit hole. It's a long story. But anyways, J.K. Simmons is basically the host of all the Farmers insurance commercials. He played Tenzin, as well as narrated not the previously on Avatar. He did the voiceover for the introduction of Legend of Korra. Teo, the son of the Mechanist, is voiced by Daniel Simonis in Seasons 1 and 3. The Boulder, I mentioned, voiced by Mick Foley. Kevin Michael Richardson also appears as the Hippo. The Mechanist is voiced by Renee Auberjonois. That's a fun name to say. Auberjonois. Tara Strong the comedian, also appears as Tom Tom in season 2 of The Last Airbender. I didn't know that. Toph is voiced by Jesse Flower, who also appears as, I don't know if I had it on here, Meng. So if you'll recall the fortune teller episode from season 1, Meng is a character who is in love with Aang for that entire episode. She is voiced by Jessie Flower. And I believe that role was actually kind of her audition to play Toph. So they cast her in season 2 as Toph. Kate Higgins appears in seasons 1 and 3 of Legend of Korra as Toph and is replaced in season 4 by Phyllis Sampler. Ty Lee is voiced by Olivia Heck. Ursa, the mother of Zuko and Azula, is voiced by Jen Cohn. Vatu is voiced by Jonathan Adams. Varric, I lied to you. It's not D. Bradley Baker. It's John Michael Simmons. Juan, this is the first Avatar, is voiced by Stephen Yeun. If you're familiar with the name Stephen Yeun, it's probably from The Walking Dead. He plays Glenn Rhee, the Asian character in The Walking Dead. Appeared in 2 episodes of Legend of Korra as the first Avatar, Juan. Hector Elizondo, I mentioned in my episodes ranking. He is voiced by Hector Elizondo, who I am most familiar with in The Princess Diaries. Shin-Fu is voiced by Mark Graw. Yang Chen is voiced by Tress McNeely. Yu is voiced by Sab Shimono. Sab Shimono also plays Gyatso, I think. I might be wrong about that. And then Yue is voiced by Joanna Brady. Why is Yue appearing in season 3? That is incorrect on my part. That should go there. And this should go... She also plays Joanna Brady. Sorry, I keep saying Brady. Jason Isaacs plays Zhao. If you're familiar with Jason Isaacs, you probably know him as Lucius Malfoy in Harry Potter. He put on an American accent, which he does very well. If you've ever seen any of his interviews where he imitates other actors, it's really funny. Or not even just other actors. One I'm thinking of that I thought was hilarious is if you've ever seen the HBO 20th anniversary Harry Potter special, they interview Jason Isaacs in his role as Lucius Malfoy, and he does an impression of Chris Columbus, the director of the first 2 Harry Potter films, perfectly. Imitates the accent perfectly. It's hilarious. He appears as Zhao in season 1 as well as season 2 of Legend of Korra. Zhu Li, who is the love interest and companion of Varric, is voiced by Stephanie Sheh, and Zuko is voiced by Dante Bosco, and then in his appearance as an elder man, an elderly gentleman in seasons 3 and 4 of Legend of Korra, he is voiced by Bruce Davison. So I don't have the characters of Arnuk, Kana, Hama, Tanrak, Unalak, Kaya, Eska, Desna, Gyatso, Iki, Milo, Kai, Opal, Suyin, Batar Jr., Wei and Wing, Awe, King Boomy. No, I do have King Boomy in there. Paku, Zhang, Piandao, Zakir, Gazan, Pali, Jet, Pipsqueak, Smellerby, Longshot, the Duke, Amon, Hiroshi, the Lieutenant, and Butacha. Done yet, but I will get there eventually. So this ended up taking longer than I expected it to, which is good. An hour and a half is what I like to shoot for. And so last but not least, let's talk the future of the channel here. So that's all I have for... Actually, before we conclude Avatar The Last Airbender, I did just want to mention the live action series and what we know about it coming up. So a couple of things. Netflix announced a live action Avatar The Last Airbender remake series, not movie, of course, because the movie sucked. But they are planning on doing a live action television series. They announced this several years ago. It originally had Brian and Mike on their writing team. They have since left the series because they believe it is going in a creative direction that they are not comfortable with, which throws some red flags up. However, everything else about the series seems to be like it is starting on the right foot apart from that. So I mentioned Daniel Day Kim has been cast as Fire Lord Ozai. They have a ton of the cast already announced, but they have basically concluded filming. Production completely ends in June, but we do have this still. This was the concept art that was released 5 or so years ago, maybe. But they originally planned for 10-hour-long episodes that basically mirrored each episode from the season, or at least all of the important episodes from the original series. Now it's been cut down to 8. So my guess is they haven't announced how many seasons this is going to be. I would like it to run for 6 seasons and have those 8 episodes basically be each half season of the show. So you could cut it off around like the Storm and the Blue Spirit, and then of course the series finale, and then maybe the Desert in season 2, and then the season 2 finale, and then the Invasion, and then the season 3 finale. Would be how I would run it, but of course I'm not in charge here. Series is using groundbreaking new LED technology while filming. That's gained a Guinness World Record. This is the same technology they used in The Mandalorian to do 360-degree shots. One of Netflix's most expensive shows, costing $15 million per episode, a total of $12 million for season 1 alone. This is mostly their CGI and effects budget. The original creators of the Nickelodeon series are not involved in the production. Like I mentioned, Brian and Mike have since left because they believed it was going in a creative direction they weren't comfortable enough. The show will not feature at Netflix's upcoming TUDUM event. It is likely we'll probably see it next fall. Plot of the live-action remake will retread the same adventures, blah, blah, blah. We already knew that. It goes into a backstory of the original show. This is the cast here. So a big controversy with the TV or with the M. Night Shyamalan movie was an overemphasis on whitewashing, as well as a significant amount of Indian characters, and not just, I shouldn't say stereotypical Asian American, but almost all of the Asian actors they used in the live action show were Indian, and people believed that M. Night Shyamalan was using, how do I word this in a way that's sensitive? Because obviously I am a white person, but people criticized M. Night Shyamalan for prioritizing his own ethnicity above other minorities when it came to minority casting in the original Last Airbender live action movie that came out in 2010. So obviously here you see a diverse cast. You see Sokka, who is played by Ian Ousley. So let's go in this order here. So Aang is being played by Gordon Cormier. Most of these actors, if not all of them, are Canadian, I believe. Ian Ousley might be American, but I think all of the other ones are Canadian. But Gordon Cormier is Filipino, so he does have Asian heritage. Obviously, it is implied in the original series that the air nomads are ethnically or portrayed as some kind of mix of South Asian and East Asian, so kind of like the Nepalese, Bhutanese, very, very kind of mountainous Asian cultures is what they were based on artistically. And then we have Kiewentio Tarbell as Katara, and Ian Ousley as Sokka. She is, I can't remember which tribe, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, she is half Asian, half First Nations. So she's Canadian, and does have indigenous ancestry, as well as Ian Ousley. He, on my first view, like I said, I'm trying to handle this sensitively as a white American, but Ian Ousley does look very white, and there were controversies with his casting when it came out. He is of partial Cherokee descent. So both of them do have First Nations or indigenous ancestry, which is what they wanted to go for. Obviously, the Water Tribe art style and animation style is very much based on Inuit or polar cultures. So they wanted to go with a more indigenous look for those two. And then Dallas Liu, in my opinion, almost a perfect casting of Zuko. Very, very... if there is a culture that looks the most... Like I said, I'm trying to handle this very sensitively. I do apologize. The Earth Kingdom and the Fire Nation are drawn very, very Asian. And so Dallas Liu, probably the most... I think he might be Chinese, but I think he's... I'm going to look it up so I don't screw it up. Dallas Liu. He's American. I lied. He's not Canadian. Personal life. He's Chinese and Indonesian. So looks like Zuko. I think physically his face looks very similar to the animated version of Zuko. I think it's a far better casting, especially compared to Dev Patel. And then, like I mentioned, Daniel Day Kim playing Fire Lord Ozai. We also have Elizabeth Yu cast as Azula, Maria Zhang as Suki, so very much sticking to that Asian cast, which I think is the right decision, but like I said, very sensitive topic for me to comment on. Yvonne Chapman as Avatar Kyoshi, Casey Camp Hornick as Gran. George Takei is playing Ko the Face Stealer. I don't like that one very much. I'm not a huge George Takei fan. But a lot of Asian cast here. I'm looking for names that are very, very popular here. Ken Leung is playing Commander Zhao. Lim Kei-tsu as Gyatso. Paul Sun-hyung Lee as Uncle Iroh, I think, is a great casting choice, both in physical appearance and what he brings on screen. They cast Bhumi with an Indian actor, which I think is an interesting choice, but I don't think it's far off from the performance in the series. They're not mentioning Daniel Day Kim here. That might be a recent announcement. He also doesn't really appear in Series 1. And we also don't see his face until Season 3. So anyways, I just wanted to touch on the live action show just real quick before we end the live stream. So upcoming, that's all we have for The Last Airbender content. We'll probably do more of this toward the end of the calendar year, so a ways off. But coming up, next week, we will be talking about royalty. So we'll be going through all of my political and leadership history sheets there, going over some royalty lists and quizzes throughout the week. I'm going to hopefully get to a video where it's going to be a really long video, so be prepared for it. But I'm going to do a tier ranking of every king and queen of England. And I'm not quite sure how I'm going to rank them yet, whether it be on... It's gonna be controversial, but I think it'd be less controversial than me ranking the presidents. I'm not gonna rank the presidents. I think royal, especially the royal family, is removed enough from active politics that I feel safe doing that as someone who understands history. But in doing the tier list, I'm also going to go through English history and the history of the English monarchs, and hopefully do a video that is informative and very rewatchable, and help people understand the history of the monarchy of England, which is something I am very interested in. So that is next week, May 22nd. The following week, we'll be talking Harry Potter, doing our second Harry Potter live stream, and talking about the upcoming TV show. That actually, I didn't predict the TV show. A bunch of people knew it was in production, but I kind of made this as a joke. I mean, all of my like live stream, all of my thumbnails are clickbait. I do that on purpose. As a YouTube channel that is growing and wanting to get more people's attention. Obviously, I'm lying about a lot of things with my thumbnails. But I actually made a joking TV show coming soon thumbnail for this in February. And then I think at the end of March or early April, they announced the TV show. And I was like, oh, Well, that works out really well. So anyways, we will be doing that on the 29th. And then the following week, we'll be doing a Game of Thrones live stream on June 5th. And then the following week, we'll return to sports content to talk about the end of the Premier League season and the midway point of the MLS season, talking about that on June 12th. Then I got some very exciting news. I mentioned I was putting off talking about it until everything was healthy and secure. I am taking a week off for the birth of my first son. So I get to become a dad in the week. Hopefully I get to become a dad between June 12th and June 26th. There is the possibility that, of course, he comes early or he comes late. What I will do with the channel then is we will just push off live streams by about a week. So the content might get a little out of order, but the live streams will still happen in this order. I will just, the Monday following the birth of my child, I will not have a live stream. I'll probably make an announcement on the channel, and then we will just go in order then following. So if we have to readjust the weeks from there, we will go from there. But then we'll return June 26th doing a geography live stream. We will go through all of my geography-based sheets, facts and figures about the continents and the countries, maybe do a little more talking about politics and like presidents and prime ministers, that sort of thing. And then the following week, we will talk about Black Mirror. I haven't actually seen if there's a release date for the Black Mirror series yet, but they said June. So by July 3rd, we should have Black Mirror out, and I shall have it watched, and we shall talk about it on July 3rd. So that's the future of the channel. That's the big news in my life, of course. So thank you very much for supporting me and my family by subscribing to this channel, as well as the other channels that I do, including Echo Worm, which is where I read all things audiobooks. Right now, we're doing The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe of the Chronicles of Narnia, which should, I think we're through 7 chapters as of midnight earlier today, and we will be doing chapter daily until May 25th. There are 17 chapters, of course, in the Chronicles of Narnia Book 2. Then we're going to move on to The Hobbit, and then The Prisoner of Azkaban, and back to Chronicles of Narnia with the horse and his boy. We also have Echo Worm Kids. We do 1 book a week. Right now we're doing the Magic Treehouse series. But if you want to support all of those channels at once and, like I said, help support my family and support this channel in being able to make more content and more available content and better produced content, go to patreon.com/sheetg and you will find links to how to support me if you're financially able to, if you think the content is up to it and you want to support what I do here and what I do outside of here. For as little as $3 a month, you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/sheetg. That's all I have for you. Tomorrow, we will start that politics content. We're not doing anything controversial, right? I think tomorrow we're going to be going through a quiz of like every president and vice president, and then the following day we're going to be doing every king and queen of England, then the following day every king and queen of France, and like I said, hopefully by the end of the week I get to that very long video doing a tier list of every king and queen of England and teaching you a little about English royal history since the invasion in 1066. Every Sunday for the foreseeable future until at least the end of July, I have scheduled out. We have more episodes of Exploring Hogwarts Legacy. Now that Hogwarts Legacy is out on all platforms, I think it'll be fun to just follow along and learn about the castle and all of the things I've found. Let me know in the comments what you guys have found that I haven't covered in any of the videos. But like I said, that's pretty much every Sunday until the end of July. That being said, that's all I have for you. Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. Otherwise, hope to see you very, very soon.